Hi, this is Paramdeep from Pristine, and if you remember, we have started creating a model based on bottoms-up planning and estimation. We have already understood the broad steps that are required in creating the model. So the first step in creating the model is to understand the business situation. So when we started with our case study, we tried to understand the characteristics of the client, the project, the revenue drivers, the cost drivers, the cash conversion, and the risk associated with the project. Once we had a clear and broad understanding about the business situation, we created a layout or a structure. So that was the next step, essentially creating the layout or the structure for the model. Once we had the layout for the structure of the model, we understood the business situation, we built the assumptions. Based on the understanding of the business situation, we built the assumptions. Again, the assumptions were based on the work breakdown structure. Essentially, how many resources are going to be deployed and where are they going to be deployed. Apart from that, we assumed the revenue to be generated essentially around the billing rate, the costs. So we assumed the revenues, we assumed the costs, we assumed the cash conversion cycle, and apart from that, we assumed the contingency cost as a percentage of the cost, as a percentage of the revenue, etc. Once we built the assumptions, the next step was to build the revenues. Revenues, we understood, is essentially price multiplied by volume. So the price is the billing rate in dollars, the volume is the number of hours that you can bill the client for. Once you build the revenues, the main cost that is going to come in any services based project is the manpower cost. Again, as far as the manpower cost is concerned, we knew the number of people that were going to be deployed and we knew the salary per month. So we then calculated the manpower cost. Again, the main thing to remember out here is which currency are we speaking about. So are we speaking about USD, are we speaking about INR or any other currency. So once we had the revenues and the costs built up, we built the other derivated costs. So for example, the travel cost. So the travel cost was based on the number of employees that were to be put on site, so on the client side. So based on that, a major part of the travel cost was going to come. So once we had the travel cost, we consolidated everything. So that was like step 5, that was like step 6, and in the step 7, we consolidated everything to get into the total cost. As far as the total cost was concerned, it was essentially the manpower cost plus the travel costs plus the hardware cost plus the software cost, and plus I wanted to keep something for the contingency, and apart from that we were giving a commission to the referring agent. So all these costs combined together, we budgeted the total cost for each of the months. Please note that in any bottoms-up exercise, since we are going to do this component by component, you have to essentially go by this way. This tends to be one of the best methodologies in estimation of the project costs, revenues, etc. Now that we have the costs, we also want to figure out how much we will be able to recover from the clients as expenses. So primarily the client would be ready to pay us the travel costs. That's how we have negotiated. So the client would be ready to pay us the travel costs plus any hardware costs that we are incurring for the client plus any software costs that we are incurring for the client. So all these three costs the client would be ready to pay us. So these are the recoverable costs. But please note that when we raise the bill, so for example, let's speak about let's say the month 1, the month 2, the month 3 and the month 4. So let's say if you raise a bill of $1,000 as your reimbursables, right, as your reimbursables in the first month, then not everything would be reimbursed in the same month. So once you've raised the bill of $1,000, so not everything would be reimbursed in the same month. What would typically happen is that, let's say you raise the bill by the 3rd of the month. Is that okay? So whatever you have incurred. So let's say if this is January, you would raise the bill on the 3rd of January. The client would pay you whatever has been raised till the 3rd of January, right? So for the month of December and till the month of 3rd of January, whatever expenses you have incurred, the client would pay you for those expenses. right? So I can assume that 10% of this month would be raised till, let's say, the 3rd of January. So $100 would be recovered in the same month. So for the month of January, whereas the 900 remaining dollars would be recovered in the next month. So this is the cash that you're going to get. So let's say in the next month you raise a bill of $2,000. What would happen is that by the 3rd of February, so let's say this is February, whatever you have raised, so that will typically be the 10% of this. So 10% of this will be 200, and the remaining 1800 would be reimbursed in the next month. So similarly, let's say in the month of March, you raise a bill of, let's say, $4,000. Then typically what would happen is that you would get $400 in the same month, plus the remaining $3,600 in the next month, and so on. So what I'm assuming, again, this is an assumption that we make, you can change this assumption later on, that 10% of the bills raised in the same month and 90% of last month's bill would be paid. Is that okay? So that's an assumption that we have as far as reimbursement of your expenses is concerned. So what we would try to do in this particular tutorial is figure out how much we'll be able to recover and when would the cash come, so that we can finally later link this to the cash flow statement and get the complete cash in place. So as far as the assumptions are concerned, we have assumed the work breakdown structure, the travel schedule, the on-site, off-site resource deployment, and the salaries that we're going to pay, the billing rate that we're going to get, etc. Now we have, as far as the recovery is concerned, we are assuming that the current month's 10% would be recovered and the last month's 90% would be recovered as cash. So we already have the revenue built up with us, we already have the manpower cost, the travel cost, the total cost build up, and now we want to build the recovery of costs. So what is going to be the recoverable costs? We can recover the hardware costs from the client. So we already know the hardware cost for the first month is linked in the cost build up. So let's link it to the cost build up. So let me just link this for you and show it to you. So I know how much we are going to bill. So that's the cost that I'm planning to incur in the first month. That's the cost that I'm planning to incur in the first month, right? So what is the software cost that I'm planning to incur? So the software cost that I'm planning to incur is this much. So I'm just linking these numbers so that I have a clear idea about what's going to happen and how much of the travel cost I'm going to incur. So essentially I'm going to incur the travel cost. Again, we have calculated the travel cost in the travel schedule as well as in the cost build up sheet. So let's link it to the travel. So I just go and link it to the travel cost. So we already have the total travel cost in place. We just go and link it to the travel cost. So we have all the recoverable costs with us now. What we just need to do is link them together. I think it's not a good idea to put it here. Let me put it here so that you can see what I'm writing. Is that okay? Now that we have all the costs with us, all I need to do is link the hardware costs recovered. So you can understand that 10% of this month's costs and 90% of last month's costs are going to be recovered. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to link them. So I'll use the same trick that we used in the last tutorial. So I just go to the assumption sheet. So I say 10% of this month. So I've just put a 1 out here. So let me protect this with dollars, right? Plus I just go there and let me do it again. So I just go to the assumption sheet. 10% I protect this with dollars by pressing an F4. 10% of this month. So this month I'm sort of replacing by 1 right now. What I'll do is that I'll go back to the old sheet and then edit it and link it to the right numbers, plus 90% again protected with dollars of the last month. So last month I'm putting as 2 right now. Is that okay? So 10% of this month. So 1 is this month and 2 is the last month. So I've just entered that. Just go to the old sheet. Press F2 to edit the cell. Just go to this one. So just delete the one and link it to this number. So I'm saying now I have linked it like 10% of this month plus, let's delete this 2 and link it to the last month. So last month I've kept as empty right now because month 0 the project has not yet started. So I just link it to the last month. When I drag it to the right, what would typically happen? So let's say if I drag it to the right, what has happened is that it has become 90% of the last month. That's essentially $9,000. Sorry, $90,000 plus 0. So it has become 90,000. In the current month, it's just 10,000. So all I need to do is just copy this to the right, Control C, Shift right, 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 Shift down, 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 and enter. So I have all the recoveries with me. Just press F2 and C. So essentially, I am recovering 10% of this 50,000 and 90% of the last month's $1 million, right? So that's what I recover. So I get 0.9 million in this particular month. So that's as far as the cost recovered is concerned. Please note that this is cash. So you are going to get the cost recovered as cash. And this recoverable cost is essentially the bills raised or the invoices raised. Is that okay? So once we know how much cash is going to be recovered, all we need to do is just sum them all up. So let me just copy this for your sake. So that's as far as this particular formula is concerned. All I've done is just copy pasted this formula to the right and down. So the total costs that are going to be recovered, that's the cash that you're going to receive from the recoverables, is sum of all the cashes, right? I just sum them all up, Control C, Shift right, 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 and enter. So that's the amount that we're going to recover. So alternatively, if you want to just paste the format, Control C, come to this one, Alt E S, and then you can see the T is T, so format and enter. So it gets into the exactly same format. So Control C, Alt E S T, and enter. That's the shortcut to copy format. Is that okay? So that's the amount of cash that we want to recover, right? So as a project manager, it's absolutely essential to understand from where the cash is going to come, right? So please note that apart from the revenues, recovery of your expenses could be a major part of the amount that you're going to recover from the client, the amount of cash that you're going to get. So just to summarize, we have already created step-by-step model. We have created the assumptions. We have built the revenue, the costs, the derived costs like the travel cost. We have projected the total cost. We have seen what kind of recovery can be made from the client. So as far as the recovery is concerned, the primary 3 costs that we can recover: 1, the hardware cost; 2, the software cost; and 3rd, the travel cost. And the recovery is such that I get 90% of last month and 10% of this month. So that's how we recover costs. So the recovery of cost is the cash that we receive, and the recoverable cost is essentially the invoice or the bill that we have raised. So that's the invoice or the bill that we have raised to the client to make the payment. I do hope that you have got an understanding of what recoverable costs are and how they can be built into the bottoms-up planning exercise that you are doing. As usual, if you have any questions, feel free to write an email to me on paramdeep@edupristine.com. I do hope that you enjoyed this tutorial and look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thank you and bye-bye.